Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind The Country Chic Cottage. There are a variety of different pads and pillows that you can use when sublimating on a variety of surfaces. I get questions literally every day about different types of those pads, what they're used for, do you need them? So I'm going to go from the most common to the most specialty. So you do not need all the pads on this list unless you are doing very specific sublimation tasks. So I'm going to go through each one, what it is, why you would need it, and that way you can decide which to put on your shopping list. Now all of these will be linked in the description below this video. If you're on computer, scroll down, click show more. If you're on mobile, scroll down. You might have to click the arrow to expand the description. You might have to swipe up on the video. There might be a little link that says more. Variety of ways depending on how you're watching on mobile. So let's get into pads. The first is a heat resistant mat. To me, this is the most important thing you can have when you're doing sublimation because things are very, very hot. You take them out of an oven or a press and you want to set them down and allow them to cool, and you don't want to set them on your work surface because you don't want to damage the surface itself. Heat resistant mat is what you need. Now you can get a variety of these. The most common really is an easy press mat, and yes, it is definitely a heat resistant mat. However, I don't like it for sublimation for a variety of reasons. The number one being that it's really, really squishy. It gives a lot. So I don't like pressing on it for sublimation, and then if I was to put something like a tumbler on it, I have trouble with them falling over and that type of thing. While this works, I tend to not use the Easy Press mat for sublimation. So I keep the Artistry heat resistant mat on hand, and it does come in 2 different sizes. Do you need 2 different sizes? Probably not. So if you just want to get one size, I would go with the larger one. However, the smaller one is convenient. So what are these used for? Like I said, you take something out of your oven, out of your tumbler press, you put it on here to cool, and it is heat resistant. Now this Artistry mat is extremely firm, so you can also press with it. So if I want to use, say, my Easy Press for sublimation, I pull out this mat and put it under my sublimation item. That way there's not much give, and I can push down on that Easy Press, get the pressure I need without the mat giving and messing up my sublimation project. So this is what I choose to use for sublimation. I might also put this in my heat press. Now a lot of heat presses, like my Caesar clamshell press, for example, it has a similar mat on the bottom already, so I don't need this. So if I had that press, that was all I had, and maybe I had something else that I put my stuff on when it comes out of the press, then maybe I wouldn't need this. However, if I have something like an Easy Press, I just gave that example. The Auto Press is another example. I like a firmer mat in it, so I like to pull the Auto Press mat out and put this mat in instead, or another mat, when I'm doing sublimation in something like my Auto Press. So it might also depend on what else you have in your craft room. Perhaps you already have the Easy Press mat. It's good enough. You're just going to lay your projects down. Perhaps you have like a wool pressing mat that you used for sewing, would work as a heat resistant mat. One other thing I like about the Artistry mats is that they're black. So if I accidentally get some ink on them, I can't see it. So I do like that. That way, if there is accidentally some ink on this, I use protective paper religiously, but if I accidentally get ink on it, I don't have a spot on my mat that I can see. So next we're going to talk about pressing pillows. Broad category, and we're going to talk about a couple different types. The most common type of pressing pillow you're going to see is something like this, and it's covered like in this Teflon, and it is a pillow. So it is a soft pillow, and they come in a wide variety of sizes, as you see. Like this is not even the largest one I have. I have a variety pack of these, and I use them quite a bit. However, they are a fixed size. Now first let's talk about what you use these for, and then I'm going to talk about an alternative that you might want to consider. Pressing pillows I put inside of something like a shirt, and I find that it helps with press marks. So polyester fabric has a memory, and you can get press marks from your press, your sublimation paper, your tape, a variety of things. Using a pressing pillow inside in a certain manner can help with that. Now I will link to a full video on using pressing pillows in case you're interested. And I really think they do help with sublimation, especially those press marks. So if you're having issues with press marks, these are for you. And the other thing I use these for is inside something with a seam or with a zipper. So like a zipper pouch, I might put this inside there. Raise that middle up, away from that zipper. Make sure that that middle gets sublimated and that the heat press doesn't rest on the zipper or on the seams or something like that. So that's another way they're very useful. Now personally, I find that these are a little restrictive, the pre-made pressing pillows. So what I like to do is to buy heat resistant foam on a roll. I bought a roll of this many years ago and it has lasted me forever, and it's not that expensive because you can get a ton of these out of there and they are completely reusable. So this is basically the foam that's inside these, but it doesn't have anything on the outside. And I can cut this with a pair of scissors to any size I would like. So I personally like that better because I can get it exactly the size of the inside of my zipper pouch, the size of my sublimation print that's going on my shirt, the size of the onesie that I need to press a little design to. Whatever it may be, I can cut exactly a piece of foam, and then I just have a variety of these that I've cut over the years, and I try those, see if one of these is the right size. If it's not, I can trim one of these off or cut a new one off of my roll. So I just keep the roll on hand at all times. So when you consider how many of these little pressing blocks that you can make out of that roll of foam, I personally feel like the roll of foam is very, very inexpensive. Bought it once, you've been using it for many years, and I use these little pieces over and over again. The only time, like, I used one so much on a project that required like medium heavy pressure that it stopped coming back up and expanding, like it was smushed flat. So I think that was about the only time that I had to like toss one. And like I said, I am very religious about adding protective paper. You don't want to get ink on these because the ink would transfer to your next project. So you always want to, I just cover them with protective paper, which I would cover these with protective paper as well. So for me, it's the same thing. So I personally would rather have the roll of foam and make my own. If you don't like that, you can buy these pre-made. All right, so next we're going to get into a couple of specialty pads that you probably see me use on this YouTube channel. Both of these you may not need. However, you may run into projects where these are very helpful. The first thing we're going to talk about is a Nomex Pad. So the Nomex Pad I often use when pressing is this thicker version. So I will link to these below, but they make a variety of thicknesses, and this thicker version is the one I use for pressing. So a lot of blanks, metal sublimation blanks, slate, things like that, might call for this under your blank. So Nomex is what is used in firefighter suits, so it is heat resistant. However, it has a little more give. And then often what's called for on those projects is for you to kind of preheat this. So you close the press on this, get this really hot, and then put your blank on top. So it's almost like you're using this to kind of get a hot surface when you're pressing. Now I really like this in my auto press when I'm doing sublimation. I use this or the Artist Spray Mat, but I really, really like this Nomex Pad. Now I bought this one pre-cut to this size. So they come in like any size you can imagine, or you could buy very large sheets. I bought this one in this size. So this Nomex Pad is fairly expensive. I bought this size and I have not had to use any other size. I haven't needed a larger size. I use this for all my projects. So I would say buy something that covers your largest heat press maybe, and you would probably be fine if you find projects where you need this. If you don't run into a project where it calls for a Nomex Pad, or you use an alternate method and it works for you, great. You don't have to have a Nomex Pad. However, if you're running into issues with projects and the blank calls for one, then don't skip it because you're gonna need it. Now I do use a thinner Nomex Pad as well, and this one is very, very thin, like super thin Nomex Pad. And this one has seen better days because I've used it so many times. I use this if I'm using just a regular convection oven, like the type of convection oven that you would use on your countertop in your kitchen, because the racks in those, they're just wires spaced about 1 inch apart, and that rack can make hot and cold spots in your oven. Then you put your blank in there and you have hot and cold spots where your blank is. So I use the Nomex Pad to avoid those hot and cold spots. So I put this over the rack in that convection oven, keep it in there at all times, add my blank to the top of it, and I kind of avoid those hot and cold spots. So I only purchased this once. I bought it about the size of my oven. I trimmed a little bit off, put it in my oven, and I used it for a very, very long time. Like I said, it's probably seen better days at this point. However, it has worked. I probably won't change it until it just stops working. Now our last sublimation pad is this rubber pad right here. And this is the one I probably get the most questions about because it is the most expensive. So this is a very special pad. This is a heat conductive pad. So it conducts heat. It's actually rubber and it has metal fibers embedded in it. What this does is surfaces that are uneven. So think about slate. It's a natural stone. It would probably be slightly uneven. A wall tile that you would put in your bathroom. They make ones for sublimation. And you know, they're kind of a natural product. They would probably have some waves in the surface. Anything like that that would be very uneven surface to sublimate on. The rubber pad helps immensely. So you put this on top of your blank, close your heat press on top, and this rubber conducts the heat, but it is, of course, flexible, so it conforms to all of those imperfections in whatever surface you put it on. So it's conforming to all those imperfections. You apply your heat, and this allows your sublimation to get into all those imperfections and make that perfect result. I use this for things like slate blanks, tile blanks, anytime the rubber pad is called for. I find that it helps and helps me to get those projects right the first time. And a lot of those blanks are the more expensive blanks. So the slate blanks are rather expensive. I personally don't want to ruin those. So what I did, this comes in a wide variety of sizes as well. What I did is I got a very large one. Larger than I'll probably ever need. So you do want it to be about an inch larger on all sides than your blank. So I could do a pretty good size project with this one, which is what I wanted. So I wanted to just purchase this one time, not need to purchase another one. You can reuse this thousands and thousands of times. You don't need to purchase a second version of this. So this is a one-time purchase, and I felt like for my one-time purchase, I wanted to get the largest one possible. However, if that is not in your budget, you can either do a couple of things. So I don't have, first of all, I do not have an alternate for this pad. I only know of one company that manufactures them. I do not know of an alternate at this time that can be used in its place. So if this is not in the budget for now, you can Google alternate methods of application of sublimation to whatever blank you're trying. So I use slate as my example. So you might Google slate tutorials that don't use that and give those a try for yourself. Just use caution because those might cause you to waste more blanks. So maybe start with the cheapest, smallest slate sublimation blank you can find using those alternate methods. Work your way up to the project you really want to make, the larger project, and hopefully you can find a method that works for your setup. If you can't, that's like one of the number one questions I get is like, why does my slate look awful? If you can't figure it out, it's more than likely that you don't have the rubber pad and that you need it. So if you have some of those sublimation blanks that are natural materials, won't be a smooth surface, I recommend going ahead and getting the rubber pad if you're going to do those. Otherwise, you might be wasting sublimation blanks. However, have people sublimated slate successfully without that? Absolutely, I've seen it myself. Can you? I'm not sure. So it's really going to depend on your setup, and you may get inconsistent results. So it may work one time, the next time you go to do it, it might not. So I personally just keep the rubber pad on hand and I use it whenever I need it. Finally, I'm going to mention these PYD Life inserts in this video. For this purpose, they are a sublimation pad with a very specific job. So if you have the Cricut mug press, these are used within the Cricut mug press to get more sizes. So to get smaller sizes to work in your Cricut mug press. Now I have a full video on how to use these. I use them to sublimate 20-ounce skinny tumblers in my Cricut mug press, along with a wide variety of other blanks. So if you want to see that, head to the description below this video and I will link to that video for you. This is a very specific pad, only if you have the Cricut mug press, and only if you want to do smaller diameter sizes than the Cricut mug press allows. Otherwise, you won't need this. Now it does come in a set of three different thicknesses. There are probably other brands on the market, but this is the only brand that I've used, and I found it fairly reasonable and they worked well, so I didn't try any other brands. So that's it. Those are the sublimation pads that I typically use in my videos, what each of them are for, and where you can purchase them. Now, I went through what they were for. You do not need to run out and just make a list, buy all of these all at once. Now that you know what they are, what they're for, you can decide as you're sublimating. Your first purchase might be a heat resistant mat. And then you might be doing some shirts, get some press marks. You decide between the pressing pillows and the roll of foam, and you go with that. And then as your sublimation knowledge grows and you want to try some of those odder sublimation blanks, some of these other pads might be on your list. You can purchase those at that time. Now it might be a year or 2 years before you want to do anything that might require a rubber pad. So you definitely don't need to buy it when you're first getting started with sublimation. But hopefully this helps you determine what those pads are, what they're for, and if you need them. If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section, ask away. If you like this video, if it helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We have videos just like this one every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.